Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into the world of health and fitness, where we learn how to overcome adversity, depict back to first fiction, and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Today, we have a very exciting episode with the chosen Juan. That's right, that is his name. He did not make that up. He was born with it, or at least I like to tell myself that. But I'm excited to get him on, so we're going to pull him on into here. And welcome to the show, Juan. It's a pleasure having you.
It's a pleasure being here, man. And you're right. It's on my birth certificate. It says the chosen Juan too. So
I just like the way it kind of flows together. It's really nice.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story on how I got this name too.
Now I need to know. Go for it.
Yeah, I used to be a security guard at Ross, and so I would always just kind of be like at the front, like near the entrance. And one day I was just chilling, just like a regular day, and some girl that I hadn't seen since like high school, and it was like probably like 3 years after high school. And she just like walked by, the doors opened, and she was just like, "It's the chosen Juan." And then she like left, and then I never saw her again. And then like later that night, I was just like, wow, that kind of had a really cool ring to it. And then I changed my Instagram name to that, and then it just kind of stuck. And then that was it. I never saw the girl after. Like, yeah. So if I ever do see her again, I'm gonna have to tell her thank you for that.
Thank you for officially branding me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it's an absolute pleasure, man, to get you on. I know we were kind of going back and forth to schedule the show, and we finally got a date, so I'm super excited. But why don't you tell our audience listening a little bit about yourself? I know you were talking, you're into powerlifting, online coaching, one-on-one training, so you're kind of like a one-stop shop, which is pretty awesome. So tell us a little bit about why you got into fitness and why you decided to become a trainer.
Yeah, the best way that I like to describe myself is that I'm like one of those nerdy kids who just got into fitness. And I started working out in 2012. I was a senior in high school. And the way that I got into it was because I ended up getting injured for basketball. I ended up like messing up my ankle, and I knew that I wasn't going to go anywhere with it. Plus, no, I don't think anybody wants to recruit a 5'6" like Mexican kid that only weighed like 120 pounds. So I ended up getting into the gym. Shortly after, somebody introduced me to powerlifting, and I loved it so much, I ended up deciding to coach it. And ever since then, I've been a personal trainer. So I've been a personal trainer probably for like 8 years now. And I compete in powerlifting. The top competitions that I've competed in is the International Powerlifting League World Championships, which I won the first place for that. Late last year, I competed in nationals and got second place for that. And pretty much my goals with just powerlifting and fitness is just to help as many people as possible be known as one of the best trainers. I'm a very competitive person, so I think that anything that you do in life, you should try to be the best version of yourself when doing it.
Isn't that true?
Yep.
Best foot forward in everything, whether it's from making sure your house is tidy, to running a business, to showing up to work, to where to just, I feel like this should encompass more than just, hey, I want to make money. It should be everything in life, kind of put your best foot forward and you get the best results out of it.
Even with fitness too, like I think that eventually it has to be more than just, I'm only doing this for health reasons, or I'm only doing this because I want to look good for other people. Like eventually it has to evolve into something more. Otherwise you probably won't do it. Even if it becomes a habit. Like I've never met anybody who just continued to work out and then got like a really amazing body just because it was for like health reasons, you know? Like most people ended up doing it because it inspires other people, or maybe it's to like be a figure in like the online space or something.
Yeah, and you were talking a little bit about how you said you were playing basketball, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of inspired you to go about and get involved in the fitness. It's pretty intriguing. What position, first of all? Because I'm very curious.
Yeah, I used to play point guard. I was literally the shortest person. But just like how I'm obsessed now with like powerlifting, that's how I used to be with basketball. Like I loved it. Like I would get home from school at like 2:30 p.m. and I would be playing till like 9 or 10 p.m. So when I got injured and I knew I wasn't going to be able to play college basketball, I needed to like fill that void with something else. And like powerlifting and fitness definitely helps.
What was the injury?
I tore ligaments in my ankle. I like was lateral stepping and then my foot hit somebody else's foot and it like internally rotated and dude, it hurt so much. Like my foot swelled up like huge. It was huge. Like I couldn't even fit most of my socks and I couldn't fit my shoe in my foot.
That must have taken a long time to heal.
Yeah, I would. So I was able to get up and like walking like with a limp, probably like in a month and a half. But even probably for like 3 years after that, it didn't feel the same. Like squatting was always like really difficult to like evenly distribute weight on my ankles and stuff like that. But luckily, I discovered squat shoes, which is like little shoes that have like a heel on there, and they help a lot with like artificially creating ankle mobility.
Oh, cool. That's a little interesting thing. But I love this is my favorite part about our field in general. It's all the people that were inspiring to do something and then life said, no, you're not supposed to go this route. Bam, injury. And then before you know it, you're projecting the exact opposite way. It's just like very similar story. But my injury, and the only reason I'm bringing it up is because yesterday I got a reminder on Facebook that it was 11 years ago to yesterday's date. And that was just like surreal to me. Like if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here. And I bet you feel the same way.
Yeah, a lot of people always ask me like, "Oh, what is your like 5-year goal? What's your 10-year goal?" And do you remember on Instagram? It was like last year when the 10-year challenge was trending.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like people would post like their before photo of like 10 years where they were at, and then now, and then I like saw mine and I was just like, wow, like 10 years ago really doesn't feel like that long ago, but I feel like a completely different person. So after seeing that, I like even reflected back on like the previous year and like the goals that I had, and I was like, they've completely changed. So like, yeah, that's kind of like my mindset now too with like just goals is that they're always going to change. Like all you can do is just really roll with the punches and just kind of pretty much live in the moment, I guess.
I love it. And I want to talk a little bit more specifically about powerlifting because that's more of your forte, right? Fair to say. But
Yep.
So first, let's take this from someone like yourself. Like, do you have a powerlifting coach yourself, or did you in the past?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, I do. I've had multiple powerlifting coaches, and I still do.
So what helped you decide who to go with? Was it a recommendation? Where did you start to look like, hey, let me find this powerlifting coach? Because a lot of people know, especially from like the previous episode we did, where your one-on-one coaches to your powerlifting coaches to your CrossFit coaches, everybody's different and everyone has their own separate niche. So how did you find your powerlifting coach?
Dude, that's such a good question, by the way, because like nobody's ever asked me that, so that's awesome. So the way that I found a powerlifting coach was from years of just scrolling through a lot of different YouTube videos and just always trying to find like the best information and who actually genuinely seemed like they cared. And I ended up finding somebody named Bryce Lewis. So shout out to him. He was my very first powerlifting coach. He was actually the drug-free nationals raw champion in the 220-pound weight class, I believe. Crazy strong guy. Has like an 800-pound deadlift. Like I think close to like a 500-pound bench press. Like 700-pound squat. Strong guy. Super smart. Always talk about the science and everything. He also had a lot of strong athletes. So pretty much just the way that anybody finds somebody is just through online.
So online, you were scrolling the YouTube and it turned out, but how specifically did you find someone in your area? Because you can be looking at YouTube and it could be, oh, that person's in a totally different country than me. Darn it.
Yeah. So no, he was actually my online coach. So he wasn't my in-person coach.
Okay.
And I was looking for people that in the area, but honestly, I just didn't find anybody that I could relate to. And this was back in like 2013-ish, where powerlifting actually, it was still kind of growing, like especially in my area. Like I'm in Orange County, Southern California, probably like about an hour away from LA for those who don't know. And at that point, I think we maybe only had one powerlifting gym in the area. The next powerlifting gym was probably like an hour drive, and I was not willing to make that drive. So I found him as an online coach, and it worked really, really well because it was a lot more affordable than in-person personal training. And at this point, I had a minimum wage paying job, And he did a really good job of just like explaining everything and breaking it down, which ended up teaching me a lot on like how to run my business. But yeah, that's pretty much how it was.
So it was the online market that kind of pulled you in. And this is the question I'm going to ask that I feel like a lot of people have is when you're finding an online trainer, right? So how do you know, one, their credentials? I know you're talking about YouTube and the way he spoke, but how do they watch you? And I know you could talk about experience with your clients on that. So how do you know your client's deadlifting correctly? How do you know your client's squatting correctly? How do you keep them more accountable to do these things? Because it's usually just sending them a program, hope they work on it, get back to you. And they go, yeah, I did it. Or
Yeah.
I took 6-minute breaks between each set. So how do you keep accountability for both ends, and how do they keep accountability on you?
So in the initial like startup process, we always do a consultation call, and I'll have them send me at least 3 videos of their lifts, the squat, bench, and deadlift. I tell them if they can send me more, to send me more, and from multiple angles. And that way I can correct them right then and there, like what to do ahead of time. And then in the meantime, after their program is written, I give on I have this app. It's called Trainerize, and on this app, it shows you videos on how to perform the exercise, and I can write them notes. And I write a lot of specific notes on like what to do with like rest times. And again, I have them film at least 1 to 2 videos per workout, and then send them to me. And then after that is when I'll correct them. And yeah, on top of all of that, I tell them that communication is key. I'm totally fine with giving my phone number to my clients. A lot of trainers aren't willing to do that, but I do because I know just how important it is for people to have somebody who kind of feels like they're there with them 24/7. Even though I'm not actually physically there with them, like it's easy, like they can reach me anytime.
I like that, because that's how, like, I feel like trainers should be. Hey, here's my number. Let's have more of a established professional relationship as opposed to just I'm kind of like a foreign entity online, because you kind of lose that disconnect of person to person, which really helps motivate. It's a good way to do it. I like that.
Thank you. Yeah,
the videos
like certain like cookie cutter programs where it's just like somebody downloads it, like you pay like $50 and they're off and they're doing it by themselves. I rarely have ever seen those like work in the long run.
Well, that's actually a good point, and I kind of want to elaborate on that, because I know what that means, cookie cutter, but I don't think the audience does. So in our field as professionals, we know, but I want you to explain it for the audience take. Like, what is a cookie cutter workout? How can you tell? And why does it not work? I kind of explain that for us a little bit.
I'm so happy that I get to talk about this. So yeah, a cookie cutter program is where pretty much it's just a generalized program for the entire public. It's not it wasn't customized for you and your goals, your body type, your lifestyle, your past injuries. And the way that you could tell if it's a cookie cutter program is if, number one, like you download it or you buy it without the person knowing anything about your past, or like I said, your lifestyle or injury background. And when you download this program too, it'll probably not have any like specific weights for you to do. It probably won't give you different options. Like, for example, if like, let's say you have to do a chest supported T-bar row, and if your gym doesn't have a T-bar row and you don't know how to replace it, it's probably a cookie cutter program. And the reason why this probably won't work for you is because of that. It's like, it's not going to be very dynamic. It's not going to be flexible. Therefore, you're going to be leaving a lot of gains in the tank. So that's why I always say for the best results, get a customized program that's been written by a coach.
Yeah, especially because you never truly know a person. And what I mean by that is, I've spoken about it a couple times before on the show, but it's just so funny. I have to keep saying it. One of those like online coaches through Instagram, I think she had something dumb like 3 million followers. And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. She used to sell her booty programs and get a butt like me, do my program. I think it was like 6 months ago. She ended up being rushed to the ER because her butt muscle exploded from injecting too much steroids into it.
Oh, wow.
And it was all over the news. But that's my point, where that program didn't get her booty like that dough, you know? It was more the steroids that she was injecting into it.
And man, dude, that pisses me off so much. Like, that's why I got into the fitness industry, because people look up to you. Like if you have a nice body, like that really does come with like a lot of responsibility. And I just feel like, dude, it's your due diligence to be putting out like good information. And you really will never know who's watching. Like you might just be posting something just to post it, and some kid out there will probably really take it to heart, And I think like if that's one thing that I feel like the fitness industry can change with, is like people being more aware of people who are enhanced and stuff like that. And like, not that I have any problems with like people who are enhanced, but just like letting people know that, hey, like this is just because somebody has a good body, it doesn't necessarily mean that they give out the best information.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. There's something wrong with not being clean. You want to inject steroids, you want to take tests, you want to do HGH, go for it. But I think, like you said, you owe the public, hey, I'm like this because I work out really hard, but I also supplement this. And you know what? That's not going to hurt them. And I think that's what they think. They think that they posted that's going to hurt them. What I think actually would happen is they start becoming niche, where it's more like, people that are on anabolic steroids. Hey, if you follow me, you want to look like me, I'll give you exactly what I was doing, and you'll get more of a niche that way out of it. And people will respect you more. And I think that's what it's really about, earning that respect, because if they found out down the line that you weren't telling the full truth, that's what's going to hurt you.
I 100% agree. And there's actually a lot of people in the like YouTube and like the fitness world who are open about it, and it doesn't kill their fan base at all. Like, in fact, I think a lot more people respect them for that. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that.
I like it, man. I like the way it's more like rationale that way. So what else could somebody do when they're looking for an online coach, especially powerlifting, where it's set lifts? Is just for my clarification, I'm not a power lifter, just full disclosure, but is it always those 3 lifts, or is there different types of lifts?
No, it's just the squat, bench press, and deadlift. And it's in competition, it's a 1 rep max. You get 3 attempts at each, and they pretty much add up your total on the 3. And then whoever has the highest total based on the weight class and your age, that's how they decide the winner.
Okay, and you have the option of going into like a clean one or an unclean one kind of deal?
Yeah, so we have 2 main powerlifting federations. We have the IPF and the IPL. The IPF is drug tested, and then the IPL it has both. You can choose to compete drug tested or non-drug tested.
Interesting. It's a little interesting tidbit of something. And I want to talk about something that you've probably have, just because we're on the topic of steroids and drugs, just an interesting tidbit of a research article that came out about 9 months ago, I think it was at this point, where they showed users, so as far as anyone, and especially with steroids, let's say they're 15 to 18 years old, especially sports, this is where it came out. They're football players. They want to get a little competitive edge. They're not really drug testing at that age. So they use for a few years. Mm-hmm. And then they get drafted. So they stop because they have to go clean, right? What they found out, which is very interesting, is that your muscle memory for those muscle is retained from the point you are your biggest or strongest. So it's easier for those people that did steroids 10 years ago to get back to that clean than it is for someone that's always been clean. So does that give them a competitive advantage in clean competitions because they did previously used? And if so, what are the repercussions? Where I see more injuries in football than I ever have before. And I kind of hold that to that. And that's what they were saying. Your muscles get too big where they tend to snap easier. And you see that all the time with football. They're on the line. They say down set, hike, and the player just falls because they just rupture something. Do you have any information or feedback? Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I've actually read that study that you are talking about. So in powerlifting, even though it's a drug, one of the most controversial topics in the powerlifting world is that drug tested doesn't mean drug free. Like a lot of the drug tests, as far as I'm aware, like they probably can't like track something that's been in your system probably like a year ago. So since they can't really like track that, like nobody really cares, I guess. Now, in terms of bodybuilding, what I've heard is that in like the drug-free bodybuilding competitions, one of the, like, you'll do like a lie detector test, and I think like one of the questions is, have you used anything in like the last 5 years? And if obviously, yeah, if the answer is no and it shows up on the lie detector test that you're telling the truth, you're free to compete, and you could compete drug tested. But yeah, there is truth to that like if you did take it previously, you can, and then you stop, you can get back there easier. That's 100% true.
Very interesting. I didn't know they did a lie detector test. See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, and it's like, anybody could probably lie on like a polygraph test. Like if you're a good liar, it's easy to cheat those tests. But I like that they're at least going out of their way to try to make it somewhat legit.
It would make someone nervous enough that doesn't know that they wouldn't enter it. And I feel like you'd get most of the people kind of just saying,
Yeah, exactly. And like, I feel like a lot of people are going to end up taking it. A lot of people end up doing it. I don't ever have an issue with it as long as like people are honest with it.
Interesting. All right, let's go back to the original where we were in kind of the beginning, where it's the finding a coach, it's finding yourself to be different. And do you have in-person powerlifting clients? You do, right?
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
So can we talk about that? Like what specific tips and tricks are there to give your clients that you don't mind sharing with us? Someone that's listening that maybe thought about being a powerlifter, if they can't afford a coach, or maybe they can, or maybe how to find one. What kind of advice can you give them as they start going along this journey and want to compete?
Yeah, so I would definitely first and foremost say get a coach, because all of the best athletes do. And there's actually a study in bodybuilding or like a statistic where they asked like the top pros, and female and male, 100% of the females that they asked all had a coach. And I think something like 50% of the pro men have a coach. And from my experience in powerlifting, especially when I compete at these top level competitions, all of the top lifters have a coach. So that's first and foremost, have a coach. In terms of how to know if it's a good coach, I would see who they have trained. Like, have they trained people that have reached a level that you've got into? And then secondly, but probably just as important, is does their style of communication fit with you? So I've had certain powerlifting coaches where it's just email check-in, and it's like email check-in like once a week, and then you probably don't really have too much access to them throughout the week. Those are usually going to be like cheaper options, like more affordable options. And then the coaches who you have like access to like 7 days out of the week, and like they respond almost like pretty ASAP. They respond like quickly. They're usually going to be a little bit more expensive, but I do think it's worth it, because once I had a situation where I got injured on a Friday. Monday was a holiday, so I didn't even hear I didn't hear from my coach until Tuesday. So I was freaking out for like 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my top advice. My next the third piece of advice that I have is to do it for fun, because if you're doing powerlifting to try to like build a name or to try to like break records and stuff like that, you're probably not going to last in the sport, because it's a very repetitive sport. Like it's just the same thing over and over. And if you're getting into it for the wrong reasons, you're probably just going to end up wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of money, and probably even injured. The people who do powerlifting, like they do it because they love it. There is no money in powerlifting. Like even if you were to win the top competition, like it's sad. I think you only get like $400 to win like the world championships and be like the #1 powerlifter. Like that doesn't even pay for a plane ticket.
It doesn't pay for the hotel, the food, the plane ticket.
Yet nothing. So if you do powerlifting, you have to do it because you genuinely have a love for lifting heavy weight.
I love it, man. It's a very passion sport. And you see it. I've watched a couple of competitions. You can see on the person's face, and I'm sure you feel it, like the adrenaline, just because you're like so excited and pumped to be there, and having similar people around you that are helping push you. And I know a lot of people who do it just because the competition pushes them to go heavier, and they're like, oh, that guy did it, I can do it. And more of like an ego and of excitement gets in the way for them. They really enjoy the sport.
At
I
every
definitely agree.
powerlifting competition that I've been at, like you see somebody who will like go for a PR. Like the last competition that I was at, I had a client who deadlifted 600 pounds, and
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. And he after he did that, he like yelled really loud, like a really loud like cheer, and that is like one of my favorite parts of powerlifting because anybody who powerlifts knows like the grind that it takes to get to like a new PR. Like the workouts are sometimes like 3 to 4 hours long. You wake up with like your joints hurting, not a soreness that you get when you do like drop sets and supersets. I'm talking like your joints hurt, your back is stiff, your knees hurt, you're tired all day. You're doing the same thing over and over and over. So like when you finally get to like this personal record, you know like this person had to give everything to get there. And it's one of the best feelings ever.
I love that. It's where it's very different. That's why I kind of like talking about it. It's not something I'm used to in my field. So this is awesome. I'm learning a lot just from listening to
What
you.
kind of training style do you do?
I'm all like rehab. So people that are coming out of surgery or any injuries, a lot of special needs training. So the total opposite side.
You probably end up seeing like a lot of like strength athletes come to you and stuff, right?
More for conditioning, but
Oh,
yeah, a
okay.
little bit. It's very seldom. We're just the company itself is very more for like general population and not really specific to powerlifting. So that's why I like this topic. I have a
Yeah.
question about weight classes.
Yeah.
So is it, I'm going to assume, and I'm sure everyone else is going to assume, it's kind of like that boxing mentality where if you're just in a weight class, you want to drop to get down. How does that affect muscle growth? How does that affect your diet? There's got to be a lot of science that goes into this because I know there is for boxing. So, you have
Yeah.
any insight on that?
Dude, these are such good questions, man. I'm loving this conversation. Like I said, these are questions that I love talking about this stuff, and I rarely ever get them. So yeah, most powerlifters they do want to drop to a weight class because what every powerlifter does is they see the weight class that they're in, like the nearest one that they compete in, and then immediately they like go and look at the winners who have won in like a powerlifting competition, or they'll look up the record holders, or they'll look up on Instagram like people, because a lot of powerlifters what they do is they like they in like their bio they put like their weight class. So if they're like 181 like 90 kilo powerlifter, like they put that. So it's easy to find like who your competition is. And every time people see that and they see like just some really strong like person, and they think that that's what powerlifting is. They think in one competition like 10 600-pound deadlifters are just going to show up. And that's not always the case. So what people do is they automatically think I'm going to drop down to the next weight class. I'm going to do a crazy like diet and then like a water manipulate like 10 pounds and then just hit PRs and win first place. But it doesn't usually work out that way because powerlifting, again, it's a very intense sport. There's a lot of studies that show powerlifting, like when you're at an elite level, you're burning like calories equivalent to like running like miles. So it's tough. So if you are restricting your calories, you're going to feel very weak. It's going to be hard for you to recover from your workouts. Your joints are going to be a lot more likely to ache. And then if you were to throw a water cut on there, which so for people who don't know, what you do is you drink a lot of extra water. You drink a lot of water, and then you pretty much just cut out your water and you dehydrate yourself, and your body just pees out everything. It pees out all the water weight. It could be kind of dangerous. So I recommend people get help from like a professional when doing this. But all of that combined, and then you have to compete. Sometimes powerlifting competitions are 2-hour weigh-ins, meaning you weigh in at 7 and then you have to weigh in at 9. Like that's like it's gonna be almost impossible to get like a new personal record when you're like training 20 pounds when you're competing 20 pounds under the weight that you were training in. So that usually doesn't work. I try to advise people against cutting. The only time that I ever really recommend cutting is if it's to like break a record or something like that. Otherwise, I just tell people, what's the point? Just like bump up to the next weight class, and you'll have a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, then you can eat whatever you want.
One of the coolest powerlifting traditions is after you weigh in, if it's a 24-hour weigh-in, you weigh in and you spend the rest of the day just eating like a bunch of junk food and just trying to blow it up as much as possible.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is why I gotta get involved. I'll stick to my Spartan races. That's what I do afterwards, where it's all like 4,000 calories. Yes.
Like, what kind of food are you eating after the races?
It's a special deli here on Long Island. It's called Seaport Deli, where they make these sandwiches that are no joke, between 1,500 and 2,000 calories per sandwich. And they're
Damn.
supposed to fill you up all day. I have two of them, where it's just like, oh my gosh, you
Well,
just feel like shit afterwards because you just ate so much.
I'm gonna have to try those if I'm ever down there. In powerlifting, kind of like one of the go-tos is like salty foods, because powerlifting and like weight training, you actually do feel a little bit better when you're more bloated. So like sushi and like throwing soy sauce on there, or ramen, those are kind of like our go-tos after a powerlifting meet, and just a lot of carbs, obviously.
Yeah, and do you want to explain why it's important to have a lot of carbs? Like what kind of energy cycles and stuff you're using during powerlifting?
Yeah, so for powerlifting, it's a little bit different than, like, for example, like let's say running. For us, we perform a lot better when we're using carbs as opposed to like fats, because the way that our workouts are is it is like a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers, but we are just kind of like sitting down for a long time. Like, powerlifters do sometimes take up to like 10-minute rests. I think that's a little too long, but like the workouts are pretty long. So you do need something that is going to kind of sit in your stomach for a little bit longer, and it is going to last you probably like 2 or 3 hours. A lot of powerlifters end up drinking a lot of electrolytes, so like body armors and like Gatorades during the workout. So yeah, it's very important. It's going to be really hard to push at maximum force if you don't have anything in your stomach.
Yeah, and it's the carb cycles that you guys are using while burning is completely different from that of, let's say, like a marathon runner or a sprinter, any kind of aerobic kind of training, where you're not using that fat oxidation cycle. So you're getting ATP from quick energy sources with those fast twitch muscles. So it's quick, and then you recover, quick, and then you recover, which is why you have those long breaks. And your muscle fibers need, I think, up to like 120 minutes to 120 seconds to fully recover, with a plus and minus, obviously, depending if you're trained and untrained. But that's why you get your long breaks. You get more power out of each lift, and you eating a lot of sugar because of the kind of cycles you're using, which require more carb-based as opposed to fat-based.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
If you ever go to a powerlifting meet, it's like so gross. I think some people like overdo it, but like you're just seeing people eat like gummy bears and like donuts and stuff like that, like throughout the day, which I don't recommend. Like, I kind of see why people do it, because it's fun. It's kind of fun too. It's almost a little bit edgy to like post that you're eating Sour Patch Kids while working out, which kind of like almost defeats the purpose of like exercise and like health, like which is like what a lot of people think. But it does help. It does help a little bit. Like I said, I think some people go overboard. I still think that you should at least have like an 80% clean diet, and then the other 20% can come from like fast digesting carbs and stuff.
I love that, man. A lot of insight into the powerlifting world, and I think I really learned a lot. But to kind of start wrapping things up, you have any advice for people going forward? And then have to give us some advice, and then tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so my advice for just people in general is to just always do the smallest amount possible. Like, you don't have to do a crazy quantum leap in life. All you have to do is like it's the small little habits that you do every day that will eventually add up to like a huge, you'll get that compound effect. So just read 10 pages of a good book per day. Listen to like a 20-minute podcast every day. Go out for like a 10-minute walk. Just do 1 extra rep on your squats. Do 5 extra pounds on like your dumbbell press. Just little things every day like that will eventually add up to something big. You don't have to go out there and read a whole book. You don't have to squat 100-pound PR. You don't have to like try to lose 30 pounds in like 1 month. It's just the little things here and there. And I think that applies to anything. Now, yeah, in terms of where people can find me on my Instagram, which is _chosen1, or people can also find me on my website, which is juansalgadotrainer.com. And on there, I have a free ebook for people that you can download that's titled Eating Out While Dieting. And on this free ebook, it teaches pretty much people how they can have a social life, still go out to eat at their favorite restaurants, and get to their fitness goals. So that's completely free. People can download that, and it'll send it to your email.
I love that. And maybe you can send me that link, and I'll put it in the show notes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that way people have access to it right there. And Thank you guys for joining us on this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is a journey, not a destination. Until next time.
Cool.